see a black man and one man, I think of strength, black empowerment we have within, building community development. Let's continue to build our own. Let's continue to stay strong. Motivation, no matter the hate, no stopping. You just go. Listen up to Quan, John, and Queen P for giving us a voice. Speak up for what's yours and yell and make that noise. We are kings and we are queens. Melanated royalty, just getting started. Loving self and knowledge. Stack that wealth. Motivational motors, y'all.
Booyah! Back at you, Motivation Motors. We have interesting discussions with Black people who've overcome adversity and root their prosperity. We got your boy, Quan John, and Miss Portia Mystique. What's up, Portia? What's going on with you? And as always, we have a very, very interesting guest all the way from the UK, Mr. Nigel BECKLES. Okay, Mr. Nigel BECKLES. He's an author. He's an author of the book, How to Avoid Making Big Relationship Mistakes. He's a certified relationship specialist. He's a podcaster, and he's a very good dude. And we're here to dig his brain into, how can we have better relationship with ourselves and have better relationship with others. Okay. Hey, Mr. Nigel BECKLES, how you doing, sir?
I'm very well. Great to be here.
All right. So, you know what? When I stumbled across the title of your book, I said, wow, this is a much needed book right here. This book is very needed. You know what I mean? Because I think I've actually been, I'm in my second marriage, and I think I probably should have read that book first before I got into my first. Okay? Because I would say that I made some very, very extremely big relationship mistakes. You know what I'm saying? But before we get into that, just let us know your background. How did you get into this? How did you become this quote unquote relationship guru, so to speak? You know what I'm saying? What happened in your life that allowed you to have so much expertise?
Well, many things really. I grew up in a home where I witnessed domestic violence as a child, so that kind of had an impact on me as an adult. For some reason, people always seem to gravitate towards me for relationship advice, and really, the book started off more as a journaling exercise, just kind of exploring my own feelings and my own mistakes. Because believe me, when I say how to avoid making the big relationship mistakes, I've made most of them, if not all of them. So,
that's crazy.
So from there, then I started to do research, and the book kind of just progressed from there. And so 5 years research, 800-page draft, which my editor got down to 400 pages. So the actual book is about 400 pages.
Whoa.
And there it is.
So, I'll shift it over. There you go. Let me see. Wow.
I'll take it.
Okay, I just want to shout out to your editor for doing that, because I myself, as an editor, formatter, and publisher, know that is not easy. So shout out to that person who was able to do that, edit 800 pages and get it down to 400 pages. Woo.
Yeah, my editor's name is Denise Roberts, and she is excellent. And she's a full-time editor. She has her own editing business. That's her profession, effectively.
Word.
She and not only did she do the editing, but she helped with the whole process. So, the typesetting, getting the book on Amazon, etc. So she was really, really good. So I'm currently working on 2 other book drafts because I fell into the same trap again. So I started to write about abusive relationships.
Right.
And I noticed about 6 weeks ago, I looked at the draft and it was heading for 600 pages. So I said, no one wants to read a 600-page book. But what I'd done, I had a lot of information about narcissists in that draft. So what I'd done, I took out all the information regarding narcissists and created a separate draft. So now I have 2 book drafts, effectively.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so I'm hoping the goal is to have them both published within the next 6 months.
Okay. Well, shout out to Denise. She's doing exactly what I do, what I did for Q's
Exactly.
books.
And
So
that's how, Nigel, that's how me and Portia, we met. I was looking for an editor for my first book, Motivational Motives, which can be found on Amazon today. And I was going through, I went on Upwork and I was looking for people, you know, specifically, I was looking for somebody Black. And they were far in between. I seen that pretty smile and I said, she looks interesting, right? So I said, let's see what that really means. And my was correct. And here we are today. And we've become friends and co-podcasters and confidants, if you will. You know what I'm saying? So it actually leads me to that question is, I mean, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they walk into relationships? Let's start there.
Oh, there's a few. First of all, I would say not listening to your intuition. That's one. And two, not carrying out your own process. In my book, I've got a chapter called The Process of Self-Discovery.
Right.
And unfortunately, a lot of people go into relationships looking for unpaid therapy. They haven't taken the time out to really process their own emotional baggage, because we've all got baggage.
We all have it.
The question becomes is, how much of it do you have? Do you have a suitcase or do you have a trailer park?
Woo!
So, and the thing is, when you go into relationships with particular issues, those issues are going to come out sooner or later. It's just a matter of time.
Absolutely.
It's a matter of time, you know. And the other thing you'll note, or I notice anyway, is that, you know, people will go through various relationships and it's always the same type of person they're attracted to or they get involved with.
Thank you.
So they're on a pattern. So basically their partners change, but they're not changing.
That's so eloquently put. Portia, I don't mean to take the helmet.
No, go ahead. I didn't
have to ask a question. I mean, because you're right. When I was growing up in my 20s specifically, and in my before I met my wife, I always dated women that I'm a helper, Nigel, by nature. So I dated women that needed help. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, we are very similar in that sense.
Right. That's what I'm saying. When I heard your interview, I said, yeah, me and Nigel have a lot of, our temperament is kind of the same. And I didn't understand that quote unquote help led to drama. You understand? Yeah, that led to drama. And then now my trauma is being kicked up. Yeah. You understand? And then at the end of the day, it was always, wow, where did she get that from? Or why did I get involved with her? When now as a 44-year-old middle-aged man, I'm like, wow, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the drama. I was looking for the trauma because I'm a helper.
Well, not necessarily, but not necessarily consciously. Not
conscious at all.
Yeah, because a lot of times we get into situations on a subconscious level.
That's right.
So you know, we're not consciously making certain relationship choices, for example.
Right.
You know, for instance, in psychology, they say that subconsciously you can be attracted to someone who reminds you of your opposite sex parent.
That's right.
So a guy might be attracted to a woman who reminds him of his mother.
Oedipus complex.
Yeah, and vice versa, but they're not aware of that.
Not aware of it.
They're not aware of it, you know. So it is a lot of, there are various things. The other thing I would say is also ignoring red flags. But often people ignore the red flags because they're too busy getting swept off their feet, too busy falling in love. and before they know it, they're in a situation that they'd rather not be in.
Right. Portia?
That is interesting. I mean, I myself don't have a lot of experience, so I'm definitely just listening on this one because I just happened to marry the first person that I ever fell in love with. So I don't have a lot of experience. I don't have any experience with bad relationships. My only hope is to learn from what we're going to be talking about today, and then I could take it into my marriage and just make sure me and my husband continue forever.
Well, I'm assuming that your marriage is going well at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, we had our rough patch, especially during COVID, because we were forced to stay together in our first year of marriage and we couldn't escape. So, in that 1 year, we saw each other's flaws and we had no choice but to learn how to adapt and things like that. So, things are going really well. Like I said, it was rough at the beginning, but where we are right now, we're still learning each other. We're still experimenting with certain things. So, we're very happy right now. But I just want to make sure that we stay happy.
Of course, of course. I mean, communication is key at the end of the day. I mean, I've
Right.
interviewed, for my podcast, I tend to interview authors, coaches, and therapists.
Right.
Okay.
Because I like to interview people who know what they're talking about and qualified
Right.
to talk
Absolutely.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've had at least three kind of therapists who deal with relationships, and they all say the same
Right.
thing. Communication is key.
Right.
Because
Right.
if you're not communicating, you know, when issues do come up, then they can't be resolved. How are they going to get resolved if you're not communicating, and communicating in a healthy way, not
Right.
communicating in a it's your fault, you know,
Right.
the blame
Yeah.
game, you know, or
Exactly.
playing the victim and all that. So you've got to have honest communication, but honest communication then stems from integrity
Right.
Mhm.
and being authentic, being
Right.
being your authentic self. I mean,
Right.
Chris Rock says in one of his routines, which is quite true, he says when you meet somebody for the first time and starting dating, probably for the first year, you're just meeting their representative.
That's right.
You
You don't know
It's
them.
true.
You don't know them at all. At all.
That is so very true. Because when I met my husband online. So we had 5 years of online dating. And of course it was, just like it was our representatives. We were trying to impress one another for that whole 5 years, and we get together and it's like, okay, for the most part, I am who I say I am and he is who he says he is. Just because, and I'm also glad that we're older when we met each other. So we didn't meet each other when we were in our teens or we were younger. Like I was in my late 20s, he was in his early 30s. So we had, at that point, we already kind of figured out who we were and what we wanted in life. So it was just easier to be ourselves because we were already comfortable with ourselves. But still, we still spent those 5 years, just trying to be the best of ourselves, putting on that, not necessarily facade, but that representation of who we want the other person to think we are. Then when we get together, it was like, okay, all the flaws are starting to come out. Now I see who you really are, how you really react, how you communicate. All of that just starts to come out. And it was just a matter of accepting it or not accepting it. Like if I didn't accept it, if I didn't accept it and we stayed together, we will always have friction, always have arguments, always have issues. Or I could accept those things. I could tolerate those things and we work on them. And so that's what we've been doing. So he kind of tolerates my flaws and we work on it, and I tolerate his and we work on it. And communication was not great at the beginning, but we're much better now thanks to COVID.
See, you know what? I got like, when you guys are speaking and it's like 100 questions are going through my mind. So when she said a few things, and so did you, Nigel, that really, I think about my own relationships and my own temperament. Now, when you guys say the communication is key, definitely. However, very easier said than done. You understand? If let's say you're with one that is not trained or doesn't know how to communicate, or their culture doesn't emphasize the gratefulness, the fruitful and the the importance of communication. One, how do you address that? You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Number one, okay, and let's say you on the other end aren't let's say you aren't you are not an obtrusive person yourself that wants to minimize conflict. You know what I'm saying? You would probably minimize the communication just to minimize the conflict, which is, defeating the whole purpose. How do you get around someone that isn't used to communicating and your own pet peeve of wanting to minimize the conflict, to, you know what I'm saying, just to minimize the chaos in the house? How do you get around that, Nigel? If I don't know if I made that question simple.
Well, it's not a question of you getting around it. It's a question of them working out how to communicate better, because you can't change somebody. People only change if they want to change.
Right.
I mean, there's a book, Acts of Faith, Evangeline Van Zandt. it's a well-established book, and it's got all quotes in it. And Wesley Snipes says, the person who enters a relationship seeking to change the other person sets the scene for a great deal of conflict. And I believe that,
I believe it too.
People only change when they want to change.
I do feel like communication was a big issue for us in the beginning. And I don't know if it's culturally, Nigerian men aren't used to, especially older Nigerian men, aren't used to having to communicate. You know what I mean? But for me, it's such a huge deal. I'm a talker. I love to talk things out, and I don't mind arguing every once in a while, but whatever. Communication is my thing. So I felt like for the first year, the three-legged race you used to do when you were a kid and you're tied to one person, you kind of, without communication, you're just fumbling around. You guys' legs are stuck together, but you're just falling all over the place. And either what will happen is the one person that does not want to get with the program is just going to continue flailing until the rope breaks and then you guys are done. Or that person will choose to, all right, let's stand up, let's work this out, and we'll move forward. And it really just depends on the two people being able or being willing to work it out. Because if they're not willing to work it out, there's no point. There's no way we're going to win this race if we're just flailing all over the field.
But then Portia, but you raised the issue there of cultural differences.
Yeah.
Because, obviously, if your husband's Nigerian, he's obviously coming from a different culture, and certain expectations are going to be different.
Yeah.
I noticed that Americans love to talk, which is why I like having American guests on my show, because it's a job. Yeah, job done. Whereas the British are more kind of stoic, as it were.
Right.
Obviously, if your husband, also you've got a couple and they're coming from different cultures, that's going to create challenges within itself. So, right there.
Yeah, there were major cultural challenges, things that I had to learn about him and accept, and things that he had to learn and accept about me. Like being an American woman, I'm very different from a typical Nigerian girl. Like things that I will do and I won't do, things that I will and I will not tolerate. So, it was up to him to decide whether or not he wanted those things. But I think we had to kind of meet in the middle. Like me, I'm naturally controlling. Naturally, that's just who I am. I don't think it's because I'm American. I think it's because I'm Portia. But I'm just naturally controlling. And so for me to be a controlling American woman, to marry a Nigerian man, can you imagine how crazy that must have been? It don't meet up. So I didn't have to not be controlling, but I had to tone it down. But he also had to accept who I am. So we had to kind of meet in the middle on that. So I wouldn't say I'm as controlling as I used to be, but I still like control. So, it's a little bit of give and take.
Well, for me, there's a thin line between having strong opinions and being controlling.
Right.
Because those are two different things. A controlling nature would be considered a toxic nature. However, having strong opinions, it's good to have strong opinions, providing you share them respectfully.
Right. Well,
that's where you're coming from.
I'm definitely opinionated, but I did have, toxic tendencies with being controlling, because the need to, always take over something and micromanaging. Those are the habits that I had to kind of kick in order to be happy in a marriage. And I don't even think it's just a marriage with a Nigerian, but just marriage, period. But it was just worse because where he's from, women don't do that. What is this? So, there was a lot of changing that needed to be evolved. And that needed to be had. And we evolved. We really did. And I feel like I'm not, my siblings, if I talk to my siblings, they're like, oh, you're so different. I used to be the tough one. I don't take nothing from nobody. But now I'm all soft now. I'm a bit more vulnerable. And they're like, oh, what is this? This is not the Portia I know. And it's I had to change a little bit. I had to adapt to make sure that I can cultivate the marriage that I have with my husband, and we can continue to grow and strengthen. And he had to do the same thing. People tell him he needs to change. Well, once you get married, you can't stay the same. It's not possible. If you stay who you were before you got married, there's probably going to be issues. And you tell me that. What if an individual did not change after they got married? There was no evolution.
Well,
Will it work?